Welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts College Football Podcast, your ticket to all things college football. Are you looking to get your college football fix? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? Join us as we talk college football, from the national championship to college rivalries to bowl games to the Heisman Trophy to which conference is the best. We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between.
What is up? Welcome to the GSMC Football Podcast. My name is Tom Dougherty. This is the college football edition of the GSMC Football Podcast, which is always brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network, as we are upon the Big Ten Media Days. So they've wrapped up yesterday. They were actually in Chicago. They should be in, everything they do seemingly is in Indianapolis, but it was in Chicago at the fine Chicago Marriott downtown Magnificent Mile. It was magnificent. Fine is not the right adjective. It has to be magnificent. A magnificent mile. But we are going to bring you all the big stuff. What coaches said. Scott Frost goes on and says some stuff making you think that that guy's not messing around this year. As we'll get to that, and then also we're going to go back to last week as well, and talk about some stuff that Nick Saban said regarding their quarterback situation in Tuscaloosa. So without further ado, we're not going to waste any time here. Let's go down and start looking at, start just talking about what happened in Chicago yesterday and the day before, as I think we had Jim. I said which days, who was which day, but of course, it was like six schools per day, so I'm not going to remember exactly which one was which on which day. But there's definitely a lot going on in the college football world right now. Also, just wanted to let everybody know that Jim Mora has a job. By the way, the ex UCLA head coach who was relieved of his duties after this last season is going to be working for ESPN as an analyst, and of course that is not surprising. All right, so here we go. Scott Frost, obviously, this is a guy who has had 2 years of head coaching experience. He's only 43 years old. He's a younger guy in the coaching realm, and he's going to get everybody excited. Obviously, he's going to have the fan base excited. He's going to have everybody ready to go. This is, of course, I'm talking about Scott Frost, as he comes in and does his first media day as the head coach of the Nebraska Cornhuskers. So one of his main quotes, obviously, people better get to know, or actually, people better get us now because we're going to keep getting better. Obviously, he could look at his schedule. People are getting you now, Scott. They're going to get you right now, because look at your schedule this year. You're going to face all the big boys right now. And that's actually probably not the worst thing to do, because I feel like the Big Ten kind of scheduling is on a little bit of a rotation, where some years you get rough schedules, some years you don't. And this is his first year. Expectations aren't going to be as high as they are going to be in the future, likely. And he can get good experience. This is a guy who hasn't had a recruiting class quite yet get in there. This is all the old players, and they're going to be able to get some experience against, and he'll really be able to weed out who he wants to keep around and who. Well, I don't know. It's not like the NFL where you can just cut people, but you could do certain things, or who's going to play and who's not going to play. How about that? At least this year. But this is definitely a coach who's very, very confident. And whether he's gone, I was assuming he's gone down on campus, and he likes the group of guys he's got right now, and he's he's definitely excited to use his youth and use his charisma to bring more talent to Nebraska. As of course, we'll cover here with the recruiting stuff. But I mean, you're not really. I mean, you usually want to give a coach 2-3 years to get a rotation in him. That's why I was like, when Texas fired Charlie Strong after just 3 years, I'm like, what do you expect? Like, this is the third year. Like, he finally got his dudes up there to the top level of performance, juniors and seniors. Why don't you just give him one more year, see what he can do with the guys it's just ridiculous. I mean, obviously, probably wouldn't have been that good because you saw what Tom Herman did with those very players. So. Obviously, Scott Frost is in a similar situation as Tom Herman. He's in a situation where he's a young coach coming over from a smaller school. Like Herman came from Houston. Well, not a smaller school, just not a Power 5 school, basically. And he's going to be expected to get a storied program back to where it once was. Obviously, Texas having a little bit more success lately, not super lately, but 10 years ago or 12 years ago, 2006. 2008. I mean, more recently that Colt McCoy was pretty darn good as well. And then Nebraska obviously hasn't seen that much success since like the 90s and such. So obviously Scott Frost has some good news. He's going to have some good news for Nebraska fans. He's going to try and keep them optimistic, try and keep them in a state of frenzy as we come down the stretch. I mean, really, it's July 25th, and in a month and a week, we're going to have games. We're going to have NFL games. I mean, it's 36 days or something like that, because we're having first game is going to be September 1st, right? So, get excited. Get rowdy. 36 days till your first day of college football. It might be even less than that. I haven't done the math correctly, really. I'm just thinking, like, okay, September 1st, 25th, add it right. And then, Scott Frost, of course, is the big name in the Big Ten. Obviously, there's a lot of other big names in the Big Ten, but he's the new face. He's the fresh face coming from an undefeated school, a team that declared and declared and never got all the fake political stuff from their governor to declare that they were the national champions last year. UCF, good gracious. I'm done talking about that. That was really weird how it all happened. It's kind of funny, though, because their coach was like, bye. He's like, yeah, that's cool. You guys are undefeated. Have fun doing that. But bye. Yeah. This is I want to give you guys some more stuff from Scott Frost. This is what he said regarding his quarterback stuff. He said, I think we've done a great job identifying quarterbacks in our offense and developing quarterbacks in our offense. I am kind of proud of that track record. Had Marcus Mariota at Oregon, and he led the country in pass efficiency. Next year, Vernon Adams led the country in pass efficiency. Last year, Mackenzie Milton, only second to Baker Mayfield. So yeah, he's right. I mean, he was at Oregon. He's had success working with quarterbacks. I mean, obviously he's right. He's the head coach. I'm not. I'm just the pundit. But I mean, yeah, having the experience like that and having a guy where you can say, yeah, I coached Marcus Mariota. I got all these guys kind of where nobody knew about them to a level where they can get some notoriety and they can get some accolades because they played well, and I got them to a pass efficiency rating that they deserve. I mean, this is a guy who was he started as a wide receivers coach at Oregon, then worked his way up to a quarterback coach, offensive coordinator, working with Marcus Mariota. So obviously he's been in big games. Marcus Mariota led that Oregon team to the college football playoff, and they lost, but I mean, it is what it is. And Scott Frost can put that under his belt. I mean, this is a guy who played. I mean, he went to Stanford and then went to Nebraska as well. So I mean, he's coaching for his alma mater right now. You can't be more excited than that. And then of course, he actually did have a brief NFL career with some interesting teams, and then of course comes back and starts he started his coaching career actually at Nebraska as a graduate assistant, moved on to Kansas State and Northern Iowa, Oregon, UCF, and then Nebraska. So I mean, pretty quick ascension to the head coaching paradigm there is pretty interesting. How you get a good gig at Oregon though. The way that offense is working, you're basically Chip Kelly's mini-me kind of thing. You're going to be able to get some jobs, and obviously Nebraska trying to get out of this little rut that they've been in, trying to get the offense a little more dynamic. So obviously Scott Frost is going to be your guy. It's clear that Nebraska is chomping at the bit. I mean, chomping at the bit. They're chomping at the bit of a tough schedule. I mean, we can look at it again. We've looked at it a couple different times here on the show, but we can look at it again just to remind you guys that they are going to be having some tough tiddlies today. This year, they're funny. Coming into the season, I mean, they're not. It's not like they were just given a cakewalk for his first season. I mean, they even have to play a tough Colorado team, which, I mean, that's kind of a rivalry that they've had for a while. They do get it at home, but then they play Michigan at Michigan. They play Wisconsin at Wisconsin. They play Northwestern at Northwestern. They play Ohio State at Ohio State. Their only tough game at home is against Michigan State. And then, I mean, they do get some. Their other games at home are, I mean, Purdue, Troy, Minnesota, Illinois. This should be, and then they do play Iowa on the road too. So all their road games are tough. They got tough road games, and that's going to be tough to win 2 of those, I think. I mean, you got Iowa on the road, Ohio State, Northwestern, and Michigan. So it's 4 tough road games: Michigan, Wisconsin, Ohio State, Northwestern, and Iowa. 5 tough road games. I don't think Iowa's going to be that tough, but I mean, it's going to be in Iowa City. So any road game like that with that kind of crowd is going to be a challenge. But the other 4 are going to be tough. They're against teams that are probably better than them. Northwestern's a very good team. Ohio State, obviously, top of the conference. Michigan's right there, and then so is Wisconsin. So maybe Nebraska can get a steal at that game in Madison. I'm not sure. That's kind of the only road game I'm seeing them actually kind of winning, really, this season, because that's a rough one. You got to play Michigan State, Michigan, and Ohio State all. Well, they play Michigan State at home, but they still got to play them all on the road. You got to play Wisconsin. You play basically the top 3 teams in your conference on the road. Basically, Ohio State, Wisconsin, and Michigan. You're playing all of them on the road within a month span. You play Michigan, you get Purdue, then you get Wisconsin, and it's a couple months. But it's still September, October, November is going to be rough for the Cornhuskers and for Scott Frost and a new coach. I mean, the thing is, he's not wrong though. Look at the comments he said. He's like, we're confident in getting our quarterback situation figured out, because he comes up and saying this is actually. Frost did inherit a quarterback at Nebraska who's pretty capable, Tristan Gebbia, who's a guy who's going to be in the gym all over the place. He's going to be working out and making sure his body is in the right shape to do it. And he definitely fits the criteria that, or criterion, whatever word you want to say, criteria that Scott Frost has kind of laid out for him as a passer. So he did actually come out and say that number one trait that a quarterback in our offense has to have is he has to be a fast blinker. He has to be able to process information really quickly and has to be a step ahead of the game. All the guys that we've had have had that trait. So obviously it's not the NFL, but it's still you got to work fast and you got to be able to get through your reads, because I mean the faster you can. College has had a knock where it's like, okay, first read for a quarterback, boom, open. Well, now in the Big Ten, it's you're playing top defense. You're going to play Michigan defense. You're going to play Ohio State defense. Playing Wisconsin defense. You're going to have to go through reads. You're going to have to really do a pro-style offense where, it's going to be about probably more of a West Coast efficiency kind of situation there at Nebraska. I mean, you see a guy who's been under Chip Kelly's tutelage for so long, you're going to learn that, he's going to be able to get some speed going in the game and get things done quickly, but also having probably some elements of West Coast of a pro style offense where you're going to have your quarterback go through his progressions. So that's pretty cool. They also he actually did go out and get his own quarterback. Frost actually has already recruited a guy. It's coming this year. Adrian Martinez is the guy who is one of the higher upside freshmen that could take over a position in college football pretty smoothly. So he's already shown some flashes in the spring game of brilliance, he did account for 4 touchdowns and nearly 200 yards of offense in that spring game for Nebraska. So you're already justifying your coach's decision right there. I know it's a scrimmage, but still very, very, very encouraging right there. So this is a coach who obviously is confident. He's back in his home state. I mean, came out and said, I'm from Nebraska. I've even been shocked about the enthusiasm right now. Nebraska fans are hungry to have Nebraska matter again and be really dominant program again. It's not going to happen overnight, but I think everyone is back on the board. Everyone's excited. We get some of the best support in the entire country. And that's true. They do. Nebraska definitely rallies around their fans, and they got a beautiful stadium out there in Lincoln, and they can have some fun watching some football this year and maybe get some big wins. All right, that'll call it for this segment. We'll come back after the break and do some talk on Michigan, and then we'll eventually get to Ohio State. And then also at the end of the show, I'm going to do a little thing on the phenomena of turnovers. We talked about the turnover chain a little bit with Miami, but we'll do it a little bit more at the end of the show. So everybody stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
All right, welcome back to GSMC Football Podcast, the college football edition. As we were talking a little bit about the Big Ten Media Days, or a lot about it, because there's a lot to talk about. There's a lot to go over. As we all know that the Big Ten is a big football conference, and they have some pretty good teams, and they have some pretty lively coaches. We just talked about Scott Frost for the first segment. Now, I want to go over to Michigan and Jim Harbaugh's comments. And of course, there were some interesting comments. Obviously, he sat down with a bunch of different people and had a bunch of different things to say regarding what he had to say, or what Jim Harbaugh wanted to kind of, bring out to. I don't know. Jim Harbaugh's kind of weird with the media. He's always been weird. He was weird with the media with the Niners. He doesn't give straight answers. I mean, you can go over and give. He doesn't. I wouldn't say he's a fan of the day at all. He doesn't like they go to it. And the thing is, we've kind of gotten used to this Jim Harbaugh act. I feel like we can advance past. People have been calling it a novelty act or a sideshow kind of deal, but we can kind of get rid of that. Scott Frost is the new darling of the conference. Jim, you need to focus on coaching. Put your nose to the grindstone and win some dang football games. And I think he knows that. But it's going to be a process. And of course, 3 years in, Harbaugh still saying he's still working on the playbook, still trying to get things figured out. This is what he quoted on him. What he said: "I think every new job, even if it's your alma mater or a different university, you've got to kind of watch and see how things run for at least 6 months or a year, find out where all the potholes are, so to speak. I don't think that's different. I knew my way around Ann Arbor." Yeah, he knew his way around Ann Arbor. He played there, but cultures change. Players, he's been around college players. I'm not going to compare. I'm not going to compare Stanford players to Michigan players when it comes to college football and everything. So you guys can do that on your own if necessary. But yeah, I think that I'm high on Michigan this year. I like the fact that he has a quarterback. I know what he's capable of doing with a good quarterback. You saw what he did with Colin Kaepernick, who, he leaves and Colin just goes right off the face of the earth. Could be for some other reasons that we're not going to get into at this point. But it is what it is. And right now, Jim's got to focus on his what's in front of him. And what's in front of him is a Big 12 schedule that might actually lead the way to a spot in the conference championship game. Maybe. If it comes down to that game against Ohio State. You look at their schedule. It's not that hard. It's actually not even as hard, I don't think, as Nebraska's is. They do obviously play Nebraska, but they have to get through that Notre Dame game. Obviously, get past the first game of the year. That's going to be the biggest game. biggest game of the year right there is probably, they have the two biggest games of the year are the first game and the last game, pretty much. I mean, you could throw that Michigan game in there, a Michigan State game in there as well, but they played Wisconsin at home, they play Ohio State on the road, and they play Michigan State on the road. That's about it. I mean, Nebraska is on the road. I mean, Northwestern's on the road, but all their home games, look at their home games this year. Western Michigan, Southern Miss, Nebraska, Maryland, they play Wisconsin at home, Penn State, Rutgers, or actually the road game is Rutgers, Indiana. Those are their home games. So they have Indiana coming to Ann Arbor, Penn State, Wisconsin, Maryland, Nebraska, SMU, and Western Michigan. The only tough one of that is probably the Wisconsin game, which they should get past, and maybe the Penn State game will have a tough one with that. And their road games, I mean, they do are at Notre Dame. That'll be tough. They have two very, very tough road games that basically bookend their season. The Northwestern game is not going to be a slouch. That's December 29th. Depends on what time of the day that is. Usually those Northwestern games can kind of be a trap game, especially if it's like 10 o'clock in the morning up there on the shores of Lake Michigan. And then obviously that Michigan State game on the road is going to be a tough one as well. So, I mean, Michigan, you can see some pitfalls, but you can see where if they can get past certain teams, I mean, they're not going to lose some of these games. Maryland at home, Rutgers, Indiana at home. Those are wins. I mean, they should get past Nebraska too. So, I mean, like I said, get past the Notre Dame game and roll the dice, baby. Just see what happens. I mean, you're not really going to have a test until that at Northwestern game, but that's if you can roll through Nebraska or at least get through Nebraska, you'll be excited for that Northwestern game on the road. Come back home, and really Northwestern, it's in Illinois. It's right there. It's not very far away. Right across. They probably could take a boat. Just drive over to the coast of Michigan, Lake Michigan, and then take a boat across to Evanston, and you'll be there for the game. That'd be kind of funny. But then, you get Maryland the next week at home. You get shellacked them, and then you get Wisconsin at home, and that'd be another one. So you get two back to back. You get Wisconsin at home, and you get Michigan State on the road. There'll be two games where they can get past those two. You're thinking real pretty about that Penn State game at home, and then they get two cupcakes before they play Ohio State. So, I mean, that's the middle. The meat of their schedule really actually is in the middle. They have two tough on the out. It's hard on the outside and tough in the middle as well. So they have two games that cap their season. That are going to be tough, and three games in the middle that are going to be challenging as well. But two of them are at home, so that's the thing. Two of them are at home against teams that they probably should beat, in my opinion, at least. And the Michigan State game is always a crapshoot, toss up. You never know what's going to happen. We saw how some of those games have ended in the past on the missed punt, or was it a block? I think it was a block. Did he miss the punt, or did he get the punt blocked? And then they tumbled all the way down, and finally Michigan State ended up in the end zone, and Jim Harbaugh was just standing there bewildered, and they win. But the big one, obviously, that everybody in Michigan fans like, you're not even talking about Ohio State. Well, the Ohio State's the last game of the year, folks. They got to go. They got to get through this middle of the schedule first, before they get to Ohio State, and then Jim Harbaugh's got to beat them. You can't go 0-4. 0-4, and how big would that be to beat them on the road in the last game of the year, which could be a game that could decide who goes to the conference title game for your division? You got to beat them. You have to beat them on the road. I mean, I know it's on the road. It's going to be a tough environment, but they beat you on the road. They beat you in your house. You're 0-3 against them, Jim. You got to beat them. You have to beat them. It's just ridiculous. Harbaugh, obviously, I think he's starting to get a little bit more of a serious track here. He's starting to get a little more introspective. Obviously, he's not trying to. It's very. He kind of came across yesterday as a very plain guy. I mean, he didn't really come across as your funny Harbaugh, or your insightful Harbaugh, your scripture reading Harbaugh, or your historian Harbaugh. He's a crazy historian. He loves Winston Churchill. He does all that kind of quotes all the time. He was a very plain truth Harbaugh. He's like, nope, it takes time. I knew this place. I know I haven't. I mean, I don't really. I mean, you find potholes the way on your way there, but obviously he's still tinkering with that playbook and stuff. So hopefully, we'll get this figured out when he gets actually a quarterback who can implement the playbook on the field, like Shea Patterson can. So, I mean, there's definitely going to be a future at Michigan that's going to be interesting. Definitely want to see it. I mean, this is obviously... This is, something that he's been thinking about a lot. And obviously, coming to media day, he's going to be tailoring his words accordingly. I mean, of course, he comes out and says, obviously, he's saying this as little as possible. I mean, this is on Monday when Michigan was doing theirs, trying to not talk about the past, not talking about being 0-3 to Ohio State. Of course, he wants to avoid all of that. I think he's like, I told his reporters that this is one of his things. I want my team to improve 1% every day, whatever that means. But of course, there's not going to be a whole rundown of what they actually have improved on, because he didn't want to quote unquote toot his own horn. And he continued on saying, I have really high expectations for the first day of practice. I just can't wait for that. And then I'll get to day 2 and want to make that the best day we've had. So, I mean, yeah, it's kind of the cliche thing. You build on every day. Every day is the best day. Every day you get better. Every day is, you're learning something you're building after the day before, blah, blah, blah. So, I mean, yeah, it's great. I mean, he's definitely a guy who's going to give you all the things you want to hear there. I mean, we want to go back to the old Jim Harbaugh where he tells us random stuff. But yeah, the days obviously of him in Ann Arbor are not numbered. He's not on the hot seat, even though some people think he should be. The AD has already come out and said that he wants Jim to retire as the coach of Michigan, and so this is. That's interesting. What I'd say is be 49% better than it was in the plane to Chicago, because the 1% every day, 1% compounding every day for Michigan. You got to definitely be excited. Are we excited for Michigan football this year? Are you excited for Nebraska football this year? I know I've kind of done Michigan and Nebraska, these two segments. We're going to go over to Ohio State in just a moment, but I just wanted to touch on Jim Harbaugh because he's got a lot of proof. I think he has a lot of proof to the media. He's a lot of proof to fans. He's got a lot of proof. I don't know. Obviously, the University of Michigan isn't really worried about it all that much. They got to trust him. But I guess you have to just take it as you go and know that Michigan has had, even with Brady Hoke, they've had a tendency to underwhelm. We thought that getting Jim Harbaugh in there would be a change of pace, would be a new awakening there, getting the old quarterback, getting the guy who took a team to the Super Bowl. I mean, took a Stanford team to multiple bowl games. So, yeah, hasn't been able to figure it out. I think it's this quarterback. Who did he have at Stanford? Andrew Luck. Who do you have at San Francisco? Colin Kaepernick. They're capable guys. He has not got that. He's got injury issues. Wilton Spate couldn't stay healthy. He was on a third quarterback last year. You got to give the guy a break a little bit. I mean, they play Ohio State the last game of the year pretty much every year, right? So you're going to be banged up. You're going to be banged up, and I don't know if he had his starting quarterback at all in any of those games. I'm like, oh, he's 0-3, which he is. You just got to figure out how to win a game. You got to find out how to win a game. You got to scratch one out. Because if that's a game where they have one, say they slipped up in that game against Michigan State, they have one loss coming into that Ohio State game. You win, you're into the conference championship game. You lose, you're out. I'm assuming Ohio State loses the game too. Or that would be their one loss, and then the head-to-head would be Michigan ahead of them. So they would win the tiebreaker because of the head-to-head. So you think that could be a possibility this year? Yes. Do you think Nebraska could be putting their name in the hat for the Western Division title? Yes. They have a very tough schedule, but they can, if they're playing all the teams they need to play to be able to have the competition, to have the head-to-head stuff, and they can get past. I mean, I'm not really super enamored by Wisconsin. I know they have a good offensive line. They have some good intangibles on the outside. The quarterback is underwhelming at best. He's a veteran guy who's going to be more of a game manager and basically let Jonathan Taylor do what you need to do. But if you're a defense, you could just key on Taylor and basically force Alex Hornibrook to beat you. That would be my tactic right there for beating Wisconsin. But looking at their schedule, I think they're going to definitely have some hiccups this year. The easiest schedule for the most solid team with the easiest schedule in the Big Ten is Iowa, and they have taken advantage of easy schedules before. And in the Big Ten West, those teams have done that, and usually there's one team that does that. Last year, it was Wisconsin. I mean, they were a good team. Don't get me wrong. They were a very good team, Wisconsin was. They actually competed with Ohio State a little bit in that title game last year as well, so for the Big Ten, but they had a very, very easy schedule, and Iowa has a very similarly easy schedule this season, so I'm going to stick with them for my pick for the Big Ten West. In the East, I don't know. I mean, honestly, the East, Trace McSorley is the veteran quarterback in the Big Ten East. Of all the Brian Lewerke's still there too. But Ohio State and Michigan both have new guys coming in for the first time this year, and it's going to be so fun to watch them. So we're going to wrap it up for this segment right here. We're going to come back and talk Ohio State on the other side, give you some of the comments that Urban Meyer had for the media. Also going to touch on Penn State as well, as I want to try and fit in all of the big schools. And we'll also... before we go, it's just what was it? The new mantra for Michigan State is heave or heave ho. I don't know what it was, but that was kind of a weird thing. I saw that. I'm like, interesting. They got bigger fish to fry. I feel like, as of right now, at least, Michigan State still mired in that in the issues that they had to deal with over the offseason. So everybody stay tuned. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA Podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, welcome back to GSMC Football Podcast, the college football edition, as Urban Meyer was on the podium yesterday for the talk that he had to do, required, for the Big Ten Media Days for Ohio State's Media Day. Of course, there was the news that assistant coach Zach Smith was fired, and he was asked about what the deal was behind that, and it looks like that Meyer did meet with select media and said that he was aware of the 2009 domestic violence arrest of Smith. No charges were filed there, but he was not aware of the 2015 incident that occurred and then obviously led to his firing. He quoted in saying, "Obviously had to make a change on our coaching staff yesterday. It was in the best interest of our team." Obviously, there's still lots of rumors out there regarding this. Is a guy who was the wide receivers coach. As there's rumors now that Brian Hartline, the former NFL receiver played for the Dolphins for a long time, could become the interim wide receiver coach. And Meyer did say that those decisions and different things will be decided by the end of the week, or later in the week when he decides to talk with his staff. Regarding the quarterback battle, obviously Joe Burrow is in LSU after spring. Meyer did talk about that and said that he quoted in saying that he had a very tough conversation in a positive way. Joe Burrow in the last 2 weeks of practice did everything he could to put himself in there. I wish he was still with us. I love Joe Burrow. That's what Meyer said about his former quarterback now down with the Tigers and LSU. And I mean, going off of that and seeing what Urban Meyer had to say, obviously when you have talented guys in there, it's tough to get reps. I mean, Tate Martell is still there, and he's a very highly touted quarterback out of a good high school, and he might not I mean, it depends what they're going to do. They could run a 2-quarterback thing and do what maybe the Ravens are going to do. They could line up Dewayne Haskins out wide and do a double pass or end around. They could pass it off that, and they could try and work it that way because Haskins. Well, I mean, both those guys, honestly, Martell and Haskins have been are dual threat guys who are very athletic. So that's definitely something he's going to have to decide. Right now, Meyer has said that Haskins is the front runner for the position, but that could change depending on how camp goes through and everything now. So I do want to, they did say that the full training camp will officially begin on August 3rd, as the strength and conditioning coach will turn the team over to Meyer the day before, actually. So, of course, they're going to still be there and doing all their conditioning and strengthening stuff like that on campus, as they probably have been for a while now. We got to keep those pumping up, good reps up. You can keep working out all you want, but it looks like that they're going to be going August 3rd so it'll be by next Friday. We're gonna have Ohio State football to talk to you about. At least just the practices, nothing, no games yet. But as far as the redshirt rule, it said that Meyer actually did have conversations with his staff regarding how they wanted to implement the new redshirt rule. It was going to be on a case by case basis, and he did not. They did not say they were going to be like a template or something they wanted. Like, they have to, like, okay, you're going to be our redshirt rule guy. You're going to be this. It's going to go by case, whatever is going to help the athlete specifically. So that seems like a pretty good way to approach that new rule. All right. Continuing on some of the stuff that he said regarding regarding Brian Hartline. It said Brian Hartline, the question was Brian Hartline they were asking if he was going to be the interim coach, and Meyer did say decision will be made later in the week. Any speculation up to that point is certainly that. I have not addressed my staff. I addressed several of our staff. It happened rather quickly. I get back tonight. Tomorrow we'll have a conversation. I'll probably release something by the end of this week what our plans are. So there you go, and you'll find out how far or how accurate the reports have been that Brian Hartline will be the next coach, wide receiver coach at Ohio State University. There you go. But so end of the week, we'll figure that out. And then he was asked about Zach Smith firing, of course. And he did say that he wasn't going to get into that and talk to the reporter, actually addressed the reporter specifically, and did say it was a personal matter, said, I'm not going to get into that. It's a very personal matter. The decision was made. I think the details that I'm obligated to give, I gave. You're talking about people's lives, etc. So the decision was made. It's time to move forward. And as we are in a public world, I try not to operate, especially when you're talking about personnel and people making things because it became public. So there you go. As far as it goes, he continue on saying that about the values of the university, and Ohio State University is bigger than all of us, and such like that. So, of course, when somebody gets fired over, and you can start questioning whether coaches were in the know about certain things or not, whether it was a 2009 domestic violence arrest or something that happened 3 years ago in 2015. You're gonna get the media just chomping on that. Oh, did you know about it? Would you cover it up? What'd you do? Like, buddy, it's okay. We handled it. Personal matter. We figured it out. He's gone. So it is what it is. It's not part of the program anymore. And can we focus on football, please? We get it. All right. So, of course, then he's asked about, of course, this is, okay, so this is actually one of the questions he was asked. I actually wanted to give you this because it is a pretty interesting thing. So it says, how much of it was violated with one core values of the program and dealing with respect towards women and domestic violence? Second question, football question, just how talent. Okay, well, of course, the guy asked, he's asking a very serious question about women and domestic violence, and goes, oh, football question, how talented is the roster top to bottom? And compare it to your old rosters now. Like, general question versus a very, serious question. And that, of course, Urban Meyer gave a nice long response to, but to it is pretty interesting. But, he did say that he's going to be able to get, so he's what he said. I'm 54 now, so to this day, I'm still teaching my family the same thing. So its core values are very strong. So that was a very big part of it. Number two, we have a very valid, and then of course addressing the second question. Number two, we have a very talented team, very good people. Guys have worked hard. We have a tradition that Coach Mick will hand me the teams on August 2nd before we start our work August 3rd. I'm anxious to see them go because obviously they've been working with the strength and conditioning coach pretty much the whole summer. So regarding the Dewayne Haskins, he was asked, of course, what his expectations were for the first-year quarterback. Meyer said, Dewayne Haskins, the position will never change. The expectation is to be the best quarterback in the Big Ten, which is very hard because we have some excellent quarterbacks. They do, with like Brian Lewerke and Trace McSorley and actually even Fitzgerald up there. I think Nick Fitzgerald's the other quarterback, as in Mississippi State. The quarterback for Northwestern is pretty good too. And then, of course, you have Shea Patterson at Michigan. So what he says, the one void is going to be the leadership component of that guy. I can't remember his name. Was there for 4 years prior. JT. JT, who I love the guy, always will. And what he did for our team inside, not many people were aware of that. I'll forever be indebted to JT Barrett. That's how good of a person, leader he was. The guy is very skilled. The guy behind him is very skilled. We took a snap today. I made it clear that Dewayne would be the quarterback, but 30 days from now, a lot happens 30 days. So they actually have another quarterback. Matt Baldwin is their third-team quarterback. He's going to be. He's a guy. He said Matt Baldwin's a 13 quarterback. He's up to 209 pounds now. He's gained 20 pounds. He had a tough injury, but I watched him work, watched him throw. I wish he had more. I wish we had one more because you'd like to have 4 quarterbacks because of injuries. But Dewayne is very talented throwing the ball. He's 1/3 of what a quarterback has to do is throwing the ball, and elite is toughness. So you got also other stuff. They was asked about Tough Borland as well as the injury, and he says he's doing great as well. And he's the same pain threshold as JT Barrett. JT Barrett, when the doctors told me after a rivalry game he was going to miss several weeks, I kind of laughed, and as I walked out of the room, it said that means he'll be 5 days. Same with Tough Borland. Well, it's a really tough injury. I'm looking at Tough and smiling. He winks at me. Of course, he's on course to perform his fall. It's just that goes into culture right there. That's interesting. That all came out right there. He goes, "Oh, yep, my guys are cool playing hurt. They have a high pain threshold. No problem." Just very interesting there. All right, we'll move on from. Obviously, Urban Meyer, you could say right there, he sounds very confident, obviously having to deal with some off the field stuff regarding his staff. Having to get questions like that is probably, it's not misguided. The media has a duty to get information out, and you got to give him credit. He gave him a nice answer and gave him a thoughtful answer. So you got to go like Urban Meyer for that. Going over to Penn State quickly before the end of the segment. Penn State obviously losing their star running back, but they still have a star quarterback, a little undersized, but you still got to like Trace McSorley because he's a winner. He's a competitor. He's a guy who's going to go out there and believe he's going to win every game. He's got a good coach in James Franklin there. As you have a few things to watch for with this coming out of the media days for them. And you got to obviously watch how the next edition of running back is going to be at Penn State. You're going to think about Trace McSorley and how he's grown, and then obviously James Franklin and how he's going to work with the new with the new roster. And obviously having a quarterback like that is pretty good. But they have a next man up kind of culture there at Penn State, and it's been able to work for them. McSorley was asked about having the differences coming to this year. It's like and having no Saquon Barkley. Obviously, he's like that's really the biggest difference. I remember walking out of the first spring practice and really looking out and not seeing Jason Kambinda over there, Marcus Allen, Troy Apika, guys who have looked at for the 2 years, not having Saquon next to me or not looking out and seeing Deshaun Hamilton. That's the biggest difference. But they got through practices 3-4 now. He used to going out and seeing DeAndre Tompkins, Nick Scott out at safety. Obviously it's a next man up scenario. He knows all of these guys, obviously calling them all by their first name. You got to get a little parentheses there to give me my name information there, but it is pretty nice. You got to definitely know that when you have a program that embraces a next man up mentality, there's no surprises then. There's no surprises. Like, oh, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? Nope, we're going to get the next guy. He's going to be right there. He's going to step in and perform. So that's a credit to James Franklin. It's a credit to that whole coaching staff there at Penn State that is going to get that team ready to compete, because they're playing in a very tough. They're probably playing in the toughest division in college football. It has to be. It has to be, because the SEC doesn't really have that. I mean, maybe you could say the SEC East, because of Alabama and Georgia, and the fact that only one of them can win the division. Or actually, no, they're in different divisions. I'm trying to think here. They play each other in the conference title game. Maybe the SEC West with LSU and Texas A&M and Alabama and Auburn. So there you go. Those are your 4 tough teams. But Alabama is just so superior that they just are okay, or they do slip up. If they do slip up, they'll slip up against Auburn like they did last year, the Iron Bowl, and still be fine. They'll still be fine, as we've seen what happen. But no, in the Big Ten, it's kind of more even. Obviously, the class of the conference is Ohio State, but they're not immune. They're definitely not immune. They got beat on their home field last year by. I mean, it was a good Oklahoma team. Believe me, it was a very good Oklahoma team. But still, a Big 12 team that I'm not that. I mean, it's just the Big 12 just pulls them down a little bit. I love Lincoln Riley. I'm really excited to see what Kyler Murray is going to do this year, and it's such. But Big 12, meh. Big 12, not excited. But no, very, very excited. Complete opposite, 180 for the Big 10, especially. All right, we'll come back and do some talk on I put turnovers up there. I don't know. We'll get to that maybe at the end of the segment. I have a couple more schools and some stuff from Nick Saban that I want to talk about on the other side. So everybody stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
All right, welcome back to GSMC Football Podcast, the college football edition, as we come to the final segment of the day today, and we have some news regarding the quarterback controversy / competition / saga from Alabama, which is, I mean, it's just not a bad problem to have, believe me. And something that the Alabama, I don't think, has dealt with for a bit here, at least this publicly, because you don't usually get a freshman quarterback to come and just win a game for you in the second half of a national championship game all that often. But Jalen Hurts actually did apparently reach out to Nick Saban and say that he's going to be there. He's not transferring. It would make the most sense for him to transfer, though, because, or maybe it'd make more sense for him to transfer after the season. He is slated to graduate in December, actually, and then could be that graduate transfer and wouldn't have to sit out a year. I don't know if he would have to do, if he did that now. But so, I mean, because he graduates in December, he can transfer now and still play this year, or is that after next season? So that's where I get kind of confused in this whole thing. I mean, it's a good problem to have. Like I said, both quarterbacks are good. One's younger than the other one. Obviously, Tua is a year younger, with Jalen being the junior, but I mean, he's graduating already, dang. But no, your Hurts, apparently Nick Saban says that Hurts told him, he called him and said that he's not, or came to him and said he's not going to leave. I mean, ESPN interviewed Nick Saban, and he was quoted in saying, Jalen actually came to me and said, I'm going to be here. I came here to get an education. I graduate in December. I'm going to be here. Yeah, I mean, when you got that much left on your plate to one more semester, I've been in the same situation. Like, I got one more semester, not leaving. This is good place. I came here to get my education, which is, I mean, it's a good thing to hear. I mean, whether he's calculating all that and be like, what if I try and, I don't think Nick Saban's the kind of guy who's going to be like, oh, he's staying for his education. Why don't we just throw him the bone and let him be the starter? It says, obviously, it looks like that, I mean, we're going to have quarterbacks. The thing is, transfers are kind of go under the radar a lot. Sometimes, I mean, some of the names we don't hear about when they're younger, they transfer. Obviously, Joe Burrow is one thing where, yes, we're going to know about that when he transfers. Shea Patterson, we're going to know about that when he transfers. But those guys, I mean, there's been a guy who like Lane Hatcher, a 3-star quarterback, Lane Hatcher, they flipped from Arkansas State. He's a three-star guy from the 2018 class. So, I mean, they also have Mac Jones, a redshirt freshman that's going to return this year too. So math would say that they're going to lose one quarterback within the next year or two, maybe, because you have Tua's little brother coming up here, and then you also have Bear Bryant's great grandson, who are on the radar for the Crimson Tide to recruit as well, coming into the 2019 seasons and beyond. So they definitely have some ideas of what they're going to be looking like, their quarterback situation is going to look like in the future. However, now it's just getting more and more confusing and more mired and more puzzling already, because you have a guy in Jalen Hurts who's 26-2 as a starter, and he's shown that he could be a top 40 passer at this level. I mean, this is a college football. There's 150 schools. When you're top 40, that's not terrible. I just think that watching Tua, even in a small sample size, his mechanics are more refined. He drives the ball down the field a little more. He keeps his eyes up down the field. Doesn't go down, doesn't pull the ball down and drop his eyes and start running as quickly as Jalen does. You saw Jalen during that national championship game. He was running around looking for passers all over the place. He couldn't find anybody. He couldn't keep his eyes on the field long enough to make a play happen, so he just ran the ball. I mean, I think the best play he had the whole game was a scramble that he ran for like 25, 30 yards. So, and versus Tua, obviously we know what his best play was, the last one of the game. So you have definitely a situation there. But I mean, Tua, honestly, remember this is a guy, Tua Tagovailoa, he said if he didn't play in that game, there was a report out that if he didn't play in that game against Georgia, which by no means was he guaranteed to play that game at all. There was kind of a fluky thing that Jalen was just not playing well, and the defense was keying on him, and they were able to stop him. And he said that he was going to transfer. Tua said he was going to transfer if he didn't play in that game, and he likely would have transferred to USC, I bet you. Because he's pretty far from home. We do have to be honest. The guy's from Hawaii. He's 5,000 miles away from home right now. So, in Alabama. So, I mean, moving to USC could be a little better for a couple of different reasons. But he wants to be the Crimson. I still think he's going to be the starter. Now, seeing that Jalen Hurts has come to. I mean, obviously, he can still transfer. He's only a junior. He has eligibility. I think he's a redshirt junior, so he's going to be graduating, obviously, a semester early. So he's a senior. He's a senior academically, but only a redshirt junior, athletically. So he has, what does that mean? He has this year and next year still eligible to play. And he could do that at any school he wants after he graduates and not have to sit. Obviously, wouldn't have to sit out that year because of the graduate transfer. He could do that. It is the most logical. He is the most logical transfer. I mean, Tua would have to sit out a year if he was going to go over to USC, and USC already kind of has their quarterback for a while. JT Daniels looks like he's going to be grasping on that job for, I mean, we haven't seen the kid play yet, but just going off of his age and how excited the coaches are to have him on campus and out of high school early, goes to show you that they have a future. They're thinking about a future of him. Definitely a future with him in their plans for quite a while. Surely. All right. Going over to more stuff more things we heard from Nick Saban. I wanted to give you some more Nick Saban stuff from the media days because, obviously, he comes and has to say, he comes back. Even the thing about Nick Saban is he can come back even after the Big Ten days. His media days have been over. It's Big Ten's turn. He still gets asked questions and still goes on ESPN because he has to comment on other comments that Jim Harbaugh said that NFL rookies are soft. I don't know what where he got that from. But I mean, it's just interesting that and of course Nick Saban has to ask about it. Nick Saban has to be asked about it and give his own thing. I'm sure he's just like, oh, I'm just going to advocate for the 9-game schedule. I just want the 9-game schedule. But they, I don't think the NFL rookies are soft. And why would you? It's interesting that they're going to say that. But they don't get hurt very often. You're going to have a bunch of running backs this year who are going to be good players for their team. I'm not really worried about them at all. For especially coming into this season, knowing that we have a bunch of different guys. I mean, this is what he said. Obviously, Harbaugh said on the ESPN, it's like, one thing I've noticed: guys coming out of college aren't as calloused up as they used to be. We used to practice twice a day in full pads. Those players know. I'm talking to you out there, who played in the college football, who played in National Football League, or played in college 10, 15 years ago. It's not even close to the same thing. There's a certain type of in shape, certain type of football fitness, certain type of calluses, muscles, joints, tendons, ligaments that all toughen up. The calluses, they callus up a little bit, and you can practice all day, run all day. Then our guys coming in right now, most of them don't have that. Yeah, Jim, it's called wear and tear. It's called rules. It's called technology. It's called actually researching and finding out that it's not very good for your body to be outside and doing two-a-days. Yeah, you really think that your ligaments can callus up? No, they just tear. They just get strained and they get teared. Your muscles, you have to tear your muscles a little bit to build them up more. Yeah, that's true. That's called kinesiology, basically, right there. That's medical. That's like very technical. But I don't understand. I mean, all that stuff. Of course, Nick Saban was asked about it and said, Nick Saban, I mean, I don't think he's had an issue because his players have actually. There's a stigmatization of Alabama players that they are too worn down by the time they get to the NFL. But they have injury problems or they get worn out quickly because they get worn down at Alabama. I mean, Nick Saban said, I know that all of our players that go to the NFL, they come back and they tell me how easy it is compared to what they used to do. I don't think that he makes a point. Nick Saban said, I want to read this quickly. Saban said, I do think, though, that he makes a point. We don't practice like we used to. They don't practice in the NFL like they used to. We don't have 2 days anymore. But these rules have been made for player safety, and I think it's a good thing. Saban continues on saying, when I was in the NFL, we used to go to camp after 4th of July. We have 6 weeks of training camp. I don't know, and I know they don't have that anymore. There's been a lot of changes in football. We need to protect the image of our game, and I think player safety has got to be the forefront of every decision we make. Very true. Agree with him completely, 100%. So stop whining about how the players are soft, Jim. Just get better efficiency. I mean, are we losing the quality of the game in the NFL by week 3? I mean, I know the first few weeks of the season can be kind of rough, especially preseason. Obviously, can be hard to watch. But when the season's in full swing, it is top level football. It is very high level football. We see crazy plays all over the place and solid plays all over the place. I know that it's just weird hearing him say that because, yes, it's obvious. You practice less. You're out there less. You got rid of rules. You created rules to not allow people to get to training camp after the 4th of July. Imagine if they started 3 weeks ago. Or 2 weeks ago. It's it would have been 20 days ago when they would have started. The Niners, I know most teams started this week. Some teams started on Wednesday, or some teams started today. Some teams started on Tuesday and Wednesday. I know the Ravens rookies have been there since last week, but they said, okay, we used to start after the 4th of July. Great. More room for injuries. More room for a torn ACL. More room for a pulled hamstring. More room for a bum shoulder. Yeah, 2 a day. It's player safety. Look at this quote. We said, there has been a lot of changes in football, and we need to protect the image of our game, and I think player safety has got to be at the forefront of every decision that we make. Duh. He coached in the NFL in 2006 and 2005. Jim, were you upset? I mean, you just coached in the NFL 5 years ago? I don't know if I don't know when they changed the rules exactly, but did you really think that the Niners team you had was you were pretty lucky that you didn't get it wasn't very injury prone. That's why they were pretty good, because they didn't have very many injuries, and all their top players were able to play at their highest level for the most amount of time. So that is a good thing. But you have to take into account that this is a collision sport. This is a wear and tear sport. This is a punch you in the mouth sport. And this is a sport that can come up and grab you. I mean, all of a sudden, all these non-contact injuries. I mean, there's all the injuries where you get hurt from being hit or hitting somebody. Then there's all the ones like Carson Wentz last year, just tweaked his knee, boom, done. We don't need that much time. These guys are professionals. Tom Brady's out there throwing to Wes Welker in a golf cart. He's got little pads on. It's fine. These guys work out by themselves. They have strength and conditioning coaches. There are nutrition plans. They have the most highest ability to technology for their bodies in the world. So I think they're going to be okay without the two-a-days. All right. That'll wrap it up for the show today. We'll come back on Friday and do another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast, the College Football Edition. We'll do the Pac-12 Media Days as they're happening today, actually. Only one day for Pac-12. They only need one day, but we'll cover it all on Friday. So everybody have a good Wednesday. Enjoy your middle of the week fun, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.